To begin learning how to do MVPA, we will analyze a data set that used 4 different classes of stimuli: cars, shoes, faces, and houses. This data set can be downloaded by clicking on the link in the More Info box down below. By highlighting all of the items and then right-clicking, you can select Download. This will place all of these files within your Downloads folder. Once it is downloaded, move it to your desktop and we will relabel it to 3D SVM tutorial. Now open a terminal and navigate to the 3D SVM tutorial folder. The data for this study, as you will see, has already been pre-processed, and the 1D files indicate which stimulus class was presented during which run. For example, cars block onsets.1D. If you look within this timing file, each number represents when that block of stimuli was presented, relative to the beginning of the run. Now, using 3D deconvolve, we will use the stim times IM option, which will estimate the amplitude of the bold response for each trial within that stimulus class. Since there were 8 trials for each stimulus class and 4 stimulus classes, we will have 32 regressors total. Copying and running this code, which you can find in the More Info box down below, should only take a few moments. When it is finished, the output file, MVPA block.nii, which you can see right here, contains image volumes, also known as sub-briks, for each instance of each regressor that we estimated. If you type 3dinfo verb MVPA block.nii, you will see which sub-briks correspond to which trial for each regressor. Remember, we have 32 total. We will then extract the sub-briks from each class in the output from 3D deconvolve using a for loop. For example, to extract the sub-briks for the car condition, we can use this line of code. This will create 8 files, cars1, cars2, all the way until cars8.nii. The seek command creates a string of numbers between the 2 arguments that are provided, in this case 1 through 8. We will use this same command template to extract the corresponding sub-briks for faces, houses, and the shoes conditions. You can read more about this command and how it works in the link to the brain book down below. When you have run all of these code commands, you should see something like this in your directory. Now that we have the sub-briks, we will create a training set for the classifier. The classifier will then have some experience of what the typical beta map looks like for each of the conditions in our experiment, and will be able to make an educated guess about what condition an unlabeled beta map belongs to. In order to avoid any ordering confounds, we will select at random beta maps from each condition. For example, we will select beta maps 3 through 8 for the cars condition using the command 3dtcat, leaving beta maps 1 and 2 for the training set that we'll discuss later. This will create a new dataset, cars.train.nii, which contains beta maps 3 through 8 for the cars condition. We will then use the same code template for the beta maps for the other conditions as well. I'm copying and pasting this, and the code you can find in the More Info box down below. We will then concatenate all of those training datasets into a single dataset called trainblock.nii, again using the 3dtcat command. Now that we've created the training dataset, let's shift our focus to a labeling file called trainlabel.1d that came with this dataset. Within this file, we find a string of the following numbers. Since there are 4 classes, we label each of the volumes in our training dataset, trainblock.nii, with a number. In this case, 1s for cars, 2s for faces, 3s for houses, and 4s for shoes. The numbers are arbitrary. You can label them however you want, as long as the numbers within a category are consistent. You will need to remember these numbers when running the classifier on the testing data, which will return a number for its best guess as to the category for each condition. With each training set containing 6 beta maps, the testing set will therefore contain the remaining 2 beta maps for each condition. These are the beta maps that the classifier will use to make a guess as to which condition they belong to. We will again use the 3D-tcat command to create a corresponding test data set for the training data set for the cars condition, and we will do this for the other conditions as well. Once we've done all of those, we will combine them into a single testing data set called testblock.nii, again using the 3D-tcat command. Just as with ROI analyses for fMRI data, we will want to restrict our analyses to a mask indicating which voxels to include in our analysis. Since we are doing a visual recognition task, we will want to restrict our analyses to the visual and temporal lobes of the brain. This mask has already been generated for you in the file final.mask.nii, which you can look at in the AFNI viewer. Notice that these voxels are within the ventral, temporal, and occipital regions of the brain. Now that we have a testing data set for the classifier, we will show each beta map to it, along with the labels indicating which condition that beta map belongs to, analogous to showing a person pictures of several different females and males to get a sense of what each category looks like. To do this, we will be using a support vector machine that attempts to draw a hyperplane between the pattern of voxels that best classifies each category. To train the model, we provide the training data set, the training labels, and a mask, which are indicated by the options train vol, train labels, and mask, respectively. To output the model generated by the support vector machine, we will use the dash model option. We will then use this output in 3D SVM again, using the testblock.nii file as our testing volume. This command will use the training set generated in the previous command to predict which volume in the testing block belongs to which category, as specified in the model trainset.model.nii part of the command. For example, we know that the first 2 volumes belong to the cars category. Since we labeled them as 1s, the classifier, if it is accurate, should also classify them as 1s. We then compare the classifier's predictions to the actual labels in order to compute its accuracy. The ClassOut option will label each prediction as an integer, and dash predictions will prepend a string to each set of predictions, in this case, exemplar. Since we have 4 categories, the classifier generates a separate file for each combination. 1 versus 2, 2 versus 3, 2 versus 4, and so on. If we look within the file exemplar_1_2.1d, for example, we find the following string of numbers, in which the classifier attempts to judge whether each volume in the testing set belongs to category 1 or category 2. That is, whether it belongs to cars or faces. The first 2 volumes, which we know are the beta maps for the cars category, have been correctly identified, although a few other beta maps have been identified as cars, although they are not. You can look at the other combinations at your leisure. The most important part for our purposes, however, is exemplar overall dag.1d. This file contains predictions for every combination of category that we used in our training data set, and the output may look something like this. As we saw before, the first 2 volumes are cars, the second 2 should be faces, the third pair are houses, and the last 2 are shoes. Note that both the faces and houses beta maps have been classified correctly, whereas cars and shoes are less accurately classified. You may be wondering why we chose the voxels that we did, specifically the ones located in the temporal and occipital lobes. In the next video, we will download the study that this mask is based on, in order to replicate the results of a famous MVPA experiment.